How's it going, everyone? This is Chris. Welcome to episode 60 of the VR Roundtable. I'm joined by Anthony.
Hey, what's up?
I'm also joined by Steve.
Hello.
And Gary.
Hello, it's good to be back.
Yeah, so Gary was gone last week, but he's back this week, and we do have a fair bit of news to cover and some games and demos to talk about later in the show. I guess, should we just get into it? I guess before we really start, this week I fell off my electric skateboard, which sucked. I basically was riding pretty fast down the road, and there were leaves, and I guess there's just this giant rock under a leaf. So I just was suddenly on the ground, and my board flipped over and skid across the road. So I don't know, that sucked. For the video people, this is kind of gory. I hope we don't get demonetized, but my hand is screwed up.
It looks like a Terminator 2 special effect.
It does. Well, it happened on Halloween, which was the worst thing. So everyone just thought I was I don't know, I had makeup on or something. And I'm actually, I'm dying and I can barely walk. So yeah. But
it's very fitting because a couple of weeks ago you talked about wearing your Gear VR while on a hoverboard or whatever.
Yeah.
So were you wearing your Gear VR this time?
Not this time. Man, I don't know. I feel like I got unlucky with that. But
it's always a rock, man. It's always a rock. I don't know how many times I've hit a rock. You hit one of those rocks, you go flying, and whatever you're on stops immediately.
Yeah, no, I mean, that sucks because I have 90 millimeter wheels on my skateboard, so I thought it'd be fine. But yeah, I guess moral of the story is just don't ride where there's leaves and rocks are the enemy. But it's fine. Good news, I'm good. I'm doing all right, and there's no injuries where I need to hold the touch controller, so I've been all set.
That's what matters.
That is what matters. I told them that earlier. I'm don't worry. My palms are all right. So yeah, the first news story, unless anyone else wants to say anything, is that Microsoft has joined OpenXR, which is kind of the project that tries to standardize the VR industry and eventually, I imagine, kind of have this unifying API where every game would work with everything. I think that's kind of the goal of it, basically. It's a layer between everything. So this is good. I mean, I think it would have been inevitable that Microsoft join it, considering every company imaginable is already in it. There's Google, AMD, HTC, Nvidia, Oculus. I mean, pretty much everybody is in OpenXR. So I'm glad that Microsoft is. And also on this article, it says Apple and Magic Leap are still not in this initiative. So I guess that could be something we talk about as well. But I can just throw it over to Gary first, I guess.
Yeah, obviously this is good news. I think everybody has been wanting this kind of stuff to happen. So OpenXR is by the Kronos Group, and they're doing this thing to standardize VR. So it's this API which sort of which sort of works as a go-between between all the different platforms. So you've got Oculus VR and then Steam VR and now Microsoft. So you've got their mixed reality platform as well. And so it's a go-between. So developers can now create something and it should just work on all the other headsets. That's the theory behind it. They're hoping to get this out. From what I've read on this article, it seems like they're trying to get this out sometime sort of mid next year, the first parts of it. It needs to be integrated into the drivers of each individual platform, and also developers then need to sort of support it as well. But it should be pretty straightforward in terms of developers. That's why they're doing this. So it shouldn't be too much extra work for them. But yeah, it's good news. I'm pretty pleased that they're doing this. And now we've got all the big players on. As you say, Chris, Apple and Magic Leap, we don't really know what Magic Leap are doing anyway, so it might not be relevant for them. But so we'll see what happens with that. But it's all good. Yeah, I'm pleased this has happened.
Yeah. What do you think, Anthony?
Yeah, I'm just glad. I'm looking forward to when it actually goes live, because my theory would be then that we should be able to jump into Microsoft's mixed reality platform. We should be able to do Cliff House, all that type of thing, I would imagine, right?
Halo Recruit. You'll get to do that.
Yeah. Oh, man. Damn. I'm waiting so long for that.
Yeah. What do you think, Steve?
I think, the guys have said it. It's the way it should be. It's great news. Microsoft, I think, has been a part of the Kronos group for a while, but officially coming out and being a part and support of the OpenXR API. Briefly, kind of want to touch on how it works without getting into too much techno babble for those listening and watching that may not know. But basically, what's going to happen is with this API, the OpenXR will communicate directly with your headset and using the drivers of your headset that's already in Windows. And then at some point, Unreal and Unity and whatever game engine the development's taking place will be updated and will support this API. So the path of the game will be, for example, Unreal to OpenXR straight to the headset. So it bypasses, for the most part, any proprietary Oculus SDK, any proprietary OpenVR, which is Valve's SDK. And there still be a manufacturer layer, I believe they called it. So any Oculus specific features, like maybe Dash 2.0 features or something like that, they can still support that for the Rift experience and try to have a selling advantage or something like that to still kind of steer people towards their hardware. But from a games running perspective, it should kind of, for the most part, bypass any proprietary software, which is just great for everybody. It's one step closer to the game or to the headsets being a dumb generic monitor, which is really what we want.
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of, unless anyone has anything else to add, there's a lot of Sony news this week. I can pass it over to Anthony to talk about what happened at the Sony conference at the Paris Games Week.
Yeah, so this week there was a lot of announcements that happened at Paris Games Week. We do have some Debbie Downer stories that are coming later. We have basically one big story that is kind of slightly depressing for the overall VR market, but all the Sony announcements, this was completely the opposite. It seems like everything is going really well for Sony and they're hitting things hard. So many different announcements. I'll go through a few of the major announcements that they had. A number of new games were announced. Eden tomorrow is a new game that's going to be coming. Apex Construct, which is actually going to be coming to all the headsets. Megalith, Blood and Truth, which is probably the biggest one of the bunch. This is coming from London Studio. Which, of course, they were the developers of PlayStation VR Worlds. I mean, I don't know that they made everything in PlayStation VR Worlds, but they made London Heist, which was the key experience for PlayStation VR Worlds. And I'm sure Steve could speak to this as well, that if you played London Heist, you know that these guys are onto something here, and they've got incredible talent. And the fact that they were able to basically focus in on and make a full-length experience, Blood and Truth, which will be coming sometime in 2018. That looks really, really prime time. Sprint Vector coming from Servio. Star Child, we've heard about that before already, of course. League of War Arena VR is coming, actually, I think like November 7th, so I think that's coming next week. We saw some more footage of Ace Combat 7. Resident Evil 7, of course, has the new DLC that's coming. We saw some of that. Rec Room was showed off as well. Ultra Wings, which has long been rumored for PSVR. The developers tweeted a couple screenshots, but nothing ever absolutely official. But Ultra Wings is coming. Bow to Blood, which kind of looks like you're in like a Final Fantasy airship, way up in the sky. I'm like a pirate ship up in the sky. And it's kind of like you're controlling the pirate ship, but you're also battling other airships, basically. Dead Hungry, which actually is already available. So, a lot of stuff was shown, and there was one downside, Moss, which was the game with the little mouse character that was supposed to be coming out later this year. That has been delayed till February 27th. So there was one delay announcement, but all of this looks really good. It seems like PlayStation VR is pushing forward. They're continuing to push forward. Lots of big games coming next year. Why don't I throw it over to Steve? Steve, I'm sure you took a look at a lot of this stuff. What do you think about the Paris Games Week?
I think it caught a lot of people by surprise. Paris Games Week it's not E3. It's not even Tokyo Game Show. It wasn't a show or an event that I was particularly really on my radar. I know I saw last week that it was a thing and that they were going to have a conference, but I wasn't expecting. So most of these were announced like leading up to the show. Like there was a pre-show, and that's where most of these games were announced. So it's still kind of like Sony showed some of it on the main show as well, but like VR still kind of got some of the early fiddle, so to speak. But still, the overall, it's a positive takeaway that Sony, it shows that they're continuing to push into VR, that they are still backing the investment, and they've thrown a lot more games at it. Now, none of these games, like as far as I know, none of them are juggernauts. They're not Skyrim. They're not Resident Evil 7. They're not like, mainstream $60 experiences coming to VR. But it's kind of like, and I hate to compare it to the Vita because we all know where the Vita has ended up, but it's just a steady stream of what I'm assuming is quality content. Like none of this stuff looks bad. So I think it's positive. It shows continual support, and I was kind of surprised by it. I wasn't expecting them to show this much.
Hey, one game I forgot to mention, we didn't have it on our list here, but okay, so the developer of Unseen Diplomacy, Triangular Pixels, I've been wondering ever since Unseen Diplomacy came out, which didn't that come out at launch, I think, back at the launch of the Vive? And
yeah.
So for all this time, I've been wondering, what is Triangular Pixels going to do? Well, they have a PlayStation VR exclusive. It's called Smash Hit Plunder. And you're basically in these castles and you're trying to damage things, smash things all over the place, and you're getting loot, and there's like ghosts that are chasing you and stuff. And so nothing specifically was announced about this being a PSVR exclusive, but it was only shown for PSVR. And if you go to Triangular Pixels website, it's just not, they're just mentioning PSVR. So it kind of seems like this is a temporary exclusive where Smash Hit Plunder, I'm sure, will come to Vive, will come to Rift. But anybody that was a big fan of Unseen Diplomacy, you've been wondering what Triangular Pixels is up to, they have a new game coming. That's exciting as well. Hopefully later this year for PSVR.
That is exciting. So, I don't know, Gary, do you have anything to add? I mean, this sounds like all great news, except I don't have a PSVR, so I'm a little bit sad about it.
Yeah, me too. I'd really like to try some of these. The trailers look great. Some of them are a little bit ambiguous as to what the actual gameplay of some of these games will actually be like. But I've gone through all of these trailers, and it looks like there's some good stuff in there. I'm actually really excited for Ace Combat 7. We've heard this for a long time, that this game is going to support VR. And then there was a few reports saying, it's only got a very small portion of it dedicated to VR. But I don't know. I think there's a fair amount of this game that will be in VR, and it looks great. The trailers for the VR aspects of this really look interesting, and I don't hear a lot of people talking about it. So if I had a PlayStation VR, this will be a title that I'd really look forward to.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I guess we'll have to throw it back over to Anthony for the next story, right?
Which one is it?
The PSVR rakes in $500 million.
Okay, yeah. I actually didn't follow this story. Steve might be a little bit more up on this, but the way I understand it is, PSVR has reached like $500 million, but in revenues, right? But it's basically hardware. I think it's mostly hardware sales that are taking it to that $500 million. And I think this story was in relation to like, hey, Xbox, what the hell are you doing? Are you going to do anything for VR? But why don't we kick it over to Steve? Steve might know a little bit more about this.
No, that's basically it. So this isn't something that Sony's come out and said, "Hey, we've made $500 million." No, this is a Road to VR article, and I just thought it was kind of interesting to stack that on with the Paris Games Week news. But if you back out and extrapolate some of the known sold quantity of PSVR headsets, we know we're somewhere around at least 1.5 million. And do the math, we can say that they've made about $500 million, which is a good big number. Now that's revenue and not profit. And compared to the 67.5 million PlayStation 4s out there, it's still relatively small portion of that user base. But it's just more on it to say, look, okay, there's 1.5 million PlayStation VR headsets out there, and like Xbox, where are you? It's and that was the whole premise of the whole Road to VR article. It's kind of maybe a little bit clickbaity, and we don't have to get into the that clickbait nature, but it was an opportunity to kind of bring up. We got the Xbox One X releasing soon. We've had the Microsoft holographic headset launch now, and in my opinion, not too glaringly positive reception. Like it doesn't seem like all the big VR fans are doing backflips over those headsets, although we've yet to see the Samsung unit. So it's just bringing that up again. Where is Microsoft? Where is VR for Xbox? Is it ever going to come?
Did any of you guys see this report? I haven't got it in front of me, and I don't know too much about it, so I apologize for bringing it up now. But it was just something that I read yesterday, and it was something to do where somebody from Microsoft was being interviewed about the Xbox One X and in relation to VR, and they were saying they were sort of alluding in some ways that the mixed reality headsets might potentially be compatible with the Xbox One X at some point. And this is the first time really they've even entertained the idea of VR on the Xbox One X, other than when it was first sort of revealed. I don't know if any of you guys saw that, and I've not got. I was just sort of trying to find the article just so I could reference it a bit more, but I don't know if you saw that.
I think I remember seeing it, and it said something to the effect of Microsoft was kind of to see how the headsets themselves would do, to see if any one of them kind of stretched out and became a preference so that they could partner more directly with Xbox, which goes back to an argument you and I had, Anthony, as you said that maybe all of the Xbox MR headsets would be compatible with Xbox One. I'm sorry, Microsoft MR headsets. Stuff all gets confusing when you're saying the words, but And I had argued that no, I think they would choose one and brand it Xbox regardless of whoever makes it. And yeah, some of that stuff I did read it. I don't remember where I read it though, Gary. Maybe while someone else is talking, we can maybe try to dig it up.
Yeah.
But one of the things that Phil Spencer said, I mean, this is old now. It's quite old actually, but he kept saying that the living room experience, they need wireless, and none of these mixed reality headsets are wired. They're all tethered. And then, Steve, you tried one of these headsets out, and the controllers are not the greatest. The controllers are not blowing away touch. I kind of really hope that Microsoft, for the Xbox, because it doesn't appear like any of these mixed reality headsets are like knocking it out of the park. So I really hope that we get completely new controllers for the whatever the headset is that works with Xbox, and it's all coming November 2018 in my opinion. The bigger question is, will we still have a VR market for these things to come to? But that's another story. But yeah, I kind of hope they completely rework some of the whichever one of these headsets they go with. I hope they rework it, new controllers, new tracking. I mean, well, the tracking's probably good.
Yeah, I doubt they will do it. But you also, anything Phil Spencer says, and not just Phil, I'm not picking on him. I actually like him better than Don Matrick or whatever the other guy's name was. Anything they say in that sentence or in that scenario is they're not necessarily making a statement about their platform, especially if it doesn't even exist. They're taking a dig, like they're trying to negative recruit, or I don't know what the correct term would be, but basically, yeah, we don't have a product for Xbox yet, but here's what we don't want to do, and then describe something that's on their competitor's platform. Like he's not trying to sell Xbox there. He's trying to get people to hold out from buying Sony's product just yet until they get around to showing theirs. So I take that statement with a grain of salt. I do not take that statement as meaning that whenever they do roll out VR, if and when they do roll out VR for Xbox, that it'll be a wireless product.
Yeah, I mean,
I think
sucks.
it will though. The living room is like we were talking last week. Technin Joe was talking about how PlayStation VR has that one camera. We need another camera, but you can't have wires everywhere. It has to be wireless, I think. So I actually believe Phil Spencer on this one, but I guess we'll find out maybe E3 2018, maybe.
I think the inside out tracking meets that for him, because you don't have cameras that you put up in the back of the room with a Microsoft headset, but it's still tethered. The headset itself is still tethered. And I don't think whenever they do announce, if they do, I don't think they're going to have that cable gone.
Yeah, well, it sucks because like I have a lot of friends who just have Xboxes like in their dorm rooms and like in their offices and things. Like, most of my friends, and like modern gamers don't really play games in the living room anymore. They usually just have their console hooked up to their monitor and they play games there. So like I wish Microsoft would at least give us like something like, okay, well, you can use a Windows mixed reality headset for now, and like I'm sure there'd be a lot of people who'd want to use it. Maybe they don't have a powerful enough computer. Like I don't know. I feel like there's a market there for something like that, and but it probably would never do that. But I don't know. It's just me. Anyone else agree with that? I don't know.
Well, just on a different point, I've got this article that I managed to track it down. So yeah, this was an interview from somebody at Microsoft called Panos Panay, and it was on Wednesday. He gave an interview, and it was specifically about the Xbox One X, and they were talking to CNBC, and he said that mixed reality can span in so many different forms. So as I say, he was actually referencing the Xbox One X in this interview, and he continued, whether it's off the back of the device, whether it's in virtual reality headsets that you have, or it's HoloLens, and you are starting to see that span through Windows, and that platform for Windows does bring it to life. So I guess, this, you can't really take that. He's not really saying anything to do with the Xbox One X in that particular quote. However, it was an interview that was focused on the Xbox One X. So I think they were maybe reading a little bit more. I saw the headline, and maybe I read a little bit more into that than I should have as well.
Yep.
Yeah. I don't know what that banging was, but that's fine.
Is that Phil Spencer trying to knock down your door and shut you up?
It's there's a lot of fireworks over here tonight, so sorry about that.
Is it a special day? What's up?
Yeah, it's we have bonfire night over here. It's the 5th of November tomorrow, and they have a lot of fireworks and stuff like that. I don't know if you guys have heard of Guy Fawkes. He tried to blow up Parliament many years ago, and for some reason we have this night where we celebrate that fact and have fireworks going up. So yeah.
Yeah, it's anonymous. It's the anonymous celebration.
Yeah.
yeah.
All right, well, that's interesting stuff. Next article is HTC is going to unveil their standalone HMD this month at their Vive developer conference. So that's cool. I don't know. It was first teased at Google I/O 2017, and HTC and Lenovo announced that they were both building standalone headsets featuring inside-out tracking technology from the Daydream platform. So it's kind of partnered with Google in some ways, at least on the tracking side of things. I don't know, who wants to talk about this first?
Well, there's not much to say. Like, I put it on the list because, only to bring highlight to the fact that, okay, they're bringing out a standalone headset. We've talked about it before, so maybe this thing will get announced and we'll have some more details on it. The markets that's going to be sold in, I wouldn't assume that it's going to be sold necessarily in the US or whatever. I don't actually know much about the headset or even what's being speculated, but really it's about what we were touching on last week, and it seems to be that Oculus and HTC are focusing towards the mobile direction, and they're not talking about Vive 2. They're not talking about Rift 2, other than to say that it's not coming. Well, I don't know if HTC ever made that statement, but the point is it seems to be their energy right now seems to be focused in that direction, and I think that's a pretty big story within VR right now with the timing of everything. Is you got the whole Pimax sitting out there that seems to be, for whatever you feel about the Pimax, is trying to at least steer it to a second generation of headsets. I would call what the Pimax is doing as generation 2. It's doing enough different and enough better. Meanwhile, crickets from Oculus and HTC, and really LG. Like, LG's in an interesting spot because they had sort of shown the headset, but now I don't think they can come out with that, because it's just a marginal improvement over the Vive. Is really, who are you going to sell it to? People that don't have a Vive? Okay. So the standalones are interesting in that perspective. Gary, what do you think? I'm kind of rambling here.
Well, no, I'm interested in the standalone. I'm going to be picking up a standalone headset at some point, whether it's the Oculus Go or whether it's this HTC headset that's coming out. We do know, we heard that they're bringing out this standalone headset. There's been a few rumors around this as well about how it's going to be called, because there were some trademarks registered in various places around the world. There was sort of the HTC, the Focus and the Eclipse, and then there's also been the Vive M as well, which some people were talking about it could stand for mobile. So we don't know exactly what they're going to announce, but it will be this standalone headset, and I'm interested to see where it will go, because the rumors are it's going to have 6 degrees of freedom, although only 3 degrees of freedom in the controller. So you got a little bit of a problem there, but it's still all interesting stuff. And I want to pick up a standalone headset is for many reasons, as we've said before, just to have it so that you can take it anywhere, you can show people, you can demo it, and just have that freedom without any tether or anything like that. I think it's great. But yeah, I'm interested to see what they are going to announce.
Do you guys remember, I was just going to say, like a year ago, Qualcomm had this reference design that they were going to work with other companies. And I believe this is one of those headsets. It's going to have the Qualcomm reference design, which it's a 835 Snapdragon, the same one that I think is in the Galaxy S8. But what Qualcomm did is they created a reference design where it has the processor, it has the battery, it has the tracking, like everything is built in and everything is designed around VR. So from a standpoint of like heat dissipation and all of that sort of thing. And so the Vive M is, because this conference is in Beijing, China, and I believe that this is going to be really just kind of the Chinese market version. I'm curious for the price though, because I think the price, like we get the price of it, and then that will tell us kind of the worldwide price as well. I mean, you'd have to imagine $199 is kind of that sweet spot, but I don't know if they can squeeze it in under there.
That's what I was going to ask. Gary, you mentioned that you're strongly on the market for a mobile headset. I am as well. And we know the Oculus Go at $199, but it's not 6 degrees of freedom on the headset itself, whereas this Vive branded or HTC branded one will be. How much more do you think it would be, and how much more would you pay over the price of the Oculus Go to have the 6 DOF in the headset itself?
It's a tough question to answer, because I think I need to try some experiences, some games and experience in order to make a judgment as to how well that 6 degrees of freedom works with a 3 degrees of freedom controller, this kind of stuff. The thing is, I've got to admit, I do like the Oculus Go, the look of it, and just everything that we're hearing about it. Although it's in some ways maybe a little bit stuck in the past with this 3 degrees of freedom. John Carmack constantly talks about how there's still plenty to explore in 3 degrees of freedom VR. So, it gives me, I'm optimistic about the future of that kind of platform. In terms of cost, how much I'd be prepared to pay on top, I mean, I'd say another maybe $50. It's difficult. I don't think they'd do it for $50, because this 6 degrees of freedom it's using much more technology in order to track its surroundings without any external sensors and stuff like this. So I think it's probably going to be around the $299 mark if I was to hazard a guess. Whether I'd pay that over the Oculus Go, it would depend entirely on the content and experiences that they could demonstrate.
Yeah, I guess that's the issue with this, is like it's Viveport or it's whatever proprietary store they have, and they have not had a good history of getting good developers on that in the past. And whereas with Oculus, they have like thousands of games on the Gear VR already, so they can port right over. What were you going to say, Steve?
I was just going to say, like, I picture these mobile headsets as not something that I'm too overly worried about having motion controlled tracked hands. Like, I still have my Rift and my Vive, and even my PSVR for those experiences. I picture it as more of a content consuming, from a video standpoint, but also maybe playing a platformer like, Lucky's Tale on the go, in which case I don't care as much about motion tracked controllers, at least not a 6 DOF, but the headset itself. Like, I don't know if I've ever experienced VR where even if I just lean in a little bit, that the image stays static. I imagine that's a little bit disorienting. So I would probably maybe consider paying a little more. I don't know, a full $100 more, but I would want to, even if I'm not going to really use it in a track sense, but just more for the comfort and the feeling of it, that when I lean a little bit, that it's not it doesn't feel like a broken experience.
The interesting point that you make there, though, is there are certain games, like, because I mentioned this a few episodes ago, like cockpit games, platform games, third-person platform games that would work really, really well in 3 Degrees of Freedom, in a 3 Degrees of Freedom headset. But the question I have is, these controllers that are being packaged with these headsets is great for certain things, but can you pair just a normal gamepad with them? That's really the question, because I want to sit down with a VR headset and play a cockpit game with a standard gamepad. I'd love to hear something about that, whether that's possible at all.
I know with the Oculus Go, you can connect Bluetooth devices to it, and they're going to try to leave that open. And they already have supported controller in the past, so hopefully we'll be good with that. But we'll have to buy it separately or have to have one. I mean, good thing we have Rifts, so we just have Xbox controllers lying around. But they're not Bluetooth ones, so we'd have to go out and get something else. That's very interesting. I mean, I agree with you guys. Like, I don't know what the cost proposition will be of having positional tracking. Like, if it's going to be really important or really not important. Because if you're buying a mobile VR headset just to play something like Lucky's Tale, you maybe don't care. And like, another thing to worry about is battery life. That would drain it a lot quicker. You might have half the battery life or something ridiculous like than an Oculus Go would have. So I mean, that's probably the biggest concern for me, because the reason they haven't done it is just battery life and thermals, you know?
Well, even the cost, though, of having the technology as additional sensors. And I don't know how a 6DOF headset would work that's standalone, that doesn't have cameras in it, or, you know, what else could it do?
Yeah, it could be the STEM system with electromagnetic radiation or whatever they use. I don't know. Oh no, it's the sad story. Anthony, do you want to talk about the sad story?
Yeah, so
the bearer
this
of
one,
bad news.
Oh no.
Yeah, this is the one that I thought is, I really think this is a huge news story, and there's no positive way to spin this, unfortunately. But the actual story, what it is, okay, so CCP games, we all know, and most of us love CCP games to some degree or another. I mean, we got Eve Valkyrie, you've got Eve Gunjack, and they recently brought Spark to PlayStation VR. So we got this story, I believe it was Monday, that CCP was going to end all VR development as of immediately, basically. In fact, they had a Atlanta-based studio that I believe was responsible for the PlayStation VR version of Spark. I'm not sure if they were responsible for the Steam or Oculus versions, but I believe PSVR, and they shut down that entire studio. Like, those employees have been laid off. They're gone. Other staff has been laid off as well. They've basically shut down all their VR studios. And the reason why I think this is such a huge story is it's not just because, oh, it's CCP games. Like, they're not the leaders in the world of gaming, you know, but the thing about it that really concerns me, and the reason why I feel there's no way to spin this in a positive direction, is the fact that their CEO, like the head of CCP Games, he was incredibly bullish on VR. In fact, he like went out of his way to like really be like a believer in VR. And that's why they had so many VR projects. That's why they put so much money into VR. And just recent, I mean, it wasn't that long ago, he was at some conference and he was talking about how he still believes in VR, but it's a little bit farther away and it's a little more of a long-term situation. But he wasn't talking about shutting things down, you know, and this was, I don't know how many months back. But the fact that they've gotten to the point, they must have looked at their business, you know, they've looked at how many copies of this game and that game that they've sold, how much money they invested in those games to break even. And they reached a point where they said, let's pull the plug. You know, we're pulling the umbilical cord. We're pulling the plug. They're stopping all VR development. And the reason this is earth-shattering, in my opinion, is because of who it is. The CEO was so bullish, and for somebody that's so bullish and so into it and such a believer, for that person to pull the plug, that is a really bad sign. And just my little mini rant on this subject, and then we can kick it over to everybody else. But my little mini rant is that I do this little daily vlog on the VR Game Rankings YouTube channel. It's a separate little thing, but if you guys want to check that out Monday through Friday. But I was talking on Monday's episode, I don't know if it was Monday or Tuesday, but I was saying VR is dead. And, you know, it's kind of hyperbole to a degree, but in a way it's true. VR as we know it is kind of dead. I believe we're entering a new era of VR where it's a niche. You know, this is a niche. This is not, I still believe VR and AR is going to dominate everything. Don't get me wrong. I still believe VR and AR will dominate, but I believe it's a lot farther away than we really ever thought it was. Like, there's a lot of people that jump on VR. They buy a Vive, they buy a Rift, they buy a PSVR. These people are flat gamers. Like me and Steve, we were flat gamers. We've jumped on the VR bandwagon. And for me and Steve, we kind of had the thought process that, okay, this is the new thing. You know, we're going to VR, and we're kind of thinking everybody else is going to go to VR too. And we're just a little bit ahead of the party, but everybody else is coming aboard too. What this reality tells me is that no, everybody isn't coming aboard right now. Unfortunately, even though we've been blown away by the experiences that we've had, the general public at large, while they might be mildly impressed with this stuff, they're not running out to their bank and withdrawing $800 and buying VR equipment. They're just not doing that. And we know they're not doing that because of the number of sales. Steve, don't you have some numbers like on Heart of the Emberstone or Talos Principle on how bad the sales have been in like the first 2 weeks of this game? Like, kick it over to you.
Yeah, so what I was going to bring it up, YouTube username BloxyMan225 made a very good post on our last episode when we were sort of talking about the state of VR. And I'll just read his. I may not read all of it. It's kind of a long post, but very thoughtful and thankful for him making it. He says, I honestly fear for the future when it comes to VR. When looking at the latest big titles, there is pretty much no user base at all, even though these games are much more polished and more of a AAA type experience. Talos Principle VR, for example, has no more than 4,000 users and has a peak of less than 40 players playing at one time. Then you have a great experience like the Invisible Hours, which has barely more than 1,000 owners in total on Steam, and with a peak players count in the single digits. And so this made me do a little bit of digging myself and using Steam Spy. And I don't know how accurate Steam Spy really is. I tried to also research that, and it said anything under 35,000 could be a little bit inaccurate. But even then, it tells you it's under 35,000. But the Gallery episode 2 was tallied at 5,000 plus or minus 2,000 total owners, and to me that seems a little. That doesn't count anything sold on the Oculus Store, of course, but that seems a little bit lower than I would expect. Episode 1 is up over 100,000 owners. Now, it was given away at various points as a bundle with the Vive, so that there's a factor there. But there were other games in early 2016 that weren't part of a bundle that have sold a boatload. Onward has sold a boatload. And it seems to be, and what the point that I think Bloxyman was making is that it seems to be that the games that are coming out now, regardless of how polished and how much more of a path towards AAA the games are, that they may not be reaching as much of an audience that some of the games in 2016 were, when we were sort of at the apex of the Vive hype. Like, everyone was falling in love with this new technology. Room scale was this amazing concept, and we could be in these video games now. And now it seems like perhaps, I don't know, I don't have any numbers, but just kind of extrapolating what's happening here through some of this data, that perhaps, you know, even though there are more headsets on the market, there's got to be more Vives out there right now in November of 2017 than there were in April of 2016. Perhaps people aren't using them as often, or perhaps people have kind of will very only occasionally break them out and are going back to flat games. And I'm not trying to sound too negative. The numbers speak for themselves. Anyone listening to this can go to Steam Spy and look up whatever game. And I looked up a lot of them. I didn't write all the numbers down, but right now in 2017, new games, new hyped games that we were all looking forward to aren't doing the same numbers that games in 2016 were, and it is a little bit disheartening. And I know that we may get a little bit of negative response to this because we're sounds like we're coming down on VR, and it is a little bit down. I mean, the CCP information sucks. Any conversation like this sucks, and we're also fans. I'm not gonna go sell my Vive because of what we're talking about right now, but there is some truth to this, and I think developers have to think about their investments, and it has to be there. And on the contrary, Oculus has a different approach, and they've thrown a lot of money in it to try to get this train rolling. But I'd have to think at some point they're going to slow down the rate that they're throwing cash, or maybe they'll keep it going. I don't know exactly how deep their pocketbooks will be on this, but if they don't keep throwing cash at this, I would have to expect that it would slow down there as well. We're not going to have games like Arctica 1 and Wilson's Heart that are these polished experiences.
I think what we need to remember as well is at the moment the focus of VR is gaming. Okay, so that's where, I mean, Oculus are funding titles. They're funding titles which are primarily gaming. They're also funding titles which are sort of experience-based, short narrative experiences, and this is not good news. The fact that CCP are closing this studio, which had been making it a very big VR game up until that point. It's not good news, but we've got to be aware that VR won't live or die through gaming alone. The technology is too impressive, and it's too, I think it's too important for the future as to whether it's going to live or die. Now, the fact that maybe the focus is on gaming at the moment, and that's great because there's so many gamers out there. Now, whether the focus can continue in that respect, just primarily, almost solely on gaming, really, when you look at things that are happening, there are some other projects out there, but it's almost solely on gaming. Now, whether that's not viable and the industry needs to look towards other means in order to propel VR onto the next stage, that's something else. We're primarily a VR gaming show on here, so our focus is on gaming, and we're really just mirroring the fact that that's where the focus of the industry is at the moment. So I think we just need to keep that in mind, that VR won't live or die from gaming alone. Although this is bad news, and I'm not pleased about it. I want some great games. I want VR development in gaming to continue.
Yeah, there's kind of like an update to the story on a different article that says they're not going to completely end development on those games. They're still going to release the winter updates, and they're trying to sell off their Newcastle studio to a third party. So I'm hoping Oculus or someone buys it. I don't know. I hope someone saves it, Palmer Luckey or something. They're trying to sell off that VR studio, and then they're going to work on these games in their London studio. But I mean, it sounds like they're phasing it out, absolutely, for sure. But I mean, it's not the worst thing, I don't think. Like, it's still terrible, but yeah.
One of the good news that came out of this, because on Monday, everybody thought Spark, because Spark came out on PlayStation VR, right? But it was coming to Steam. It was coming to Oculus. And I got in a discussion with a couple of guys in some different threads where, what about Steam? What about Oculus? Is this Spark game going to just be canceled? And they were saying, well, yeah, it's going to be canceled because they shut down the studio. They need to have employees to maintain the game. It's an online game. Well, so we all kind of assumed that Rift owners and Vive owners would not be able to play Spark, which is a tragedy because Spark is a damn good game on PSVR. It really has a good feel to it. But then we get a little bit of good news is that Spark is coming to Oculus. It is coming to the Rift. It's coming on November 16th, and there's going to be cross-platform play between all three headsets. So that's good news. What I'm guessing about that is that even though they shuttered these studios, they probably were able to take enough people and say, okay, you guys are going to I'm guessing Spark was just completely done. It's like it's done. And they're just going to take a small support staff to make sure that everything's running good and for updates and stuff like that. But just going back to this topic long term, I just want to say that I'm not trying to say that VR is dead and we made the wrong decision and this is a disaster. What I'm trying to say is it's just for the next couple of years, like, you're going to have to be happy with a lot of indie stuff. Okay, so if you liked Vertigo by Zalubu Productions, if you just think of games that were made by 1, 2, 3 people, like Oregon Quarter, maybe a relatively small team in Outer Brain Studios, if you're cool with that type of stuff, I think you're going to continue to get a lot of that type of stuff. But if you want, see, the thing is, we're getting spoiled right now with Talos and Heart of the Emberstone and LA Noire and Payday 2 and all these games that are coming. We're kind of actually spoiled. And my worry is that when we get into later next year, like all of these projects have been in development for years, and they're so far in development that canceling them now would be dumb. So they're going to let them ride out. But then once all of these things have gone, then we're going to go back to the indie days. It's going to be an indie parade. That's what we're going to be dealing with. So I hope you guys like your indie games, because that's kind of what we're going to get for a couple of years. And then I do see VR will make a comeback. It'll make a major comeback, and everybody will jump in. But it's just going to be farther away. That's all I'm trying to say here, is that it's going to be kind of quiet for a couple of years, maybe.
Yeah, it might. I mean, I guess it's not the worst thing for me, because I do want to kind of work on indie stuff, and I've always been a little bit worried that VR is gonna take off so quick that I don't have a chance to like do anything with it. Like everyone's already making AAA stuff. So, but yeah, I think overall, yeah, go ahead.
I think a lot of people, a lot of investors, a lot of studios are going to be looking at Fallout 4 VR, and are going to be looking at the numbers that it generates, and is going to be thinking of how they invest in VR, or whether or not they invest in VR based on what that game does. If that game can't do what Audio Shield did in terms of number of units sold, now I know it's a more expensive title, obviously, but if it can't have the success that Audio Shield had, or that Rick and Morty had, and given that that's such a popular game made by such a popular developer for PC titles. It's not like we're bringing a PlayStation known developer. It's not like Naughty Dog is releasing a game on PSVR or on PC VR. We're talking about Bethesda, and there's a lot of PC gamers that play Bethesda titles. And if that game can't kind of break this mold, I think that's going to tell a big picture of the story. So it'll be very interesting to kind of chart the success of Fallout 4 VR. I think a lot of weight is on that game.
Yeah, I mean, it's concerning, because I have a friend back at home who has a Vive, and it just collects dust all the time because he's sick of all the indie games. He wants real games. But now there's real games out, and he's still, he already put it away. Like, he's not coming back to it for a while. So, like, that's the thing, is it's hard to kind of, once people are like, I'm sick of all these tiny games that cost a lot of money, it's tough to get people back in there and like telling them, actually, there are good games out now. You just got to reset up your lighthouses and stuff. I don't know, for some people, they might be hesitant to do that. So
I can't believe scary. People can go back to flat gaming. I can't go back. I've tried it. Like if VR were to just die, I'd need a whole new hobby, because I can't go back to flat gaming.
You like bowling?
I feel that. It's too good. Like, it's too much of a jump from flat gaming that it's like impossible to go back. It feels like you're living in like the last century when you're doing that.
It really is.
VR.
I mean, part of it is that there's hassle with the VR. It is a hassle. You've got to put the headset on. You've got to set up these sensors, and some people are turned off even by that. So I think that weighs into it. And as the technology progresses and we get headsets which are wireless, inside-out tracking becomes a standard with controllers and headsets. I honestly think that will make a big difference as well to whether people adopt this kind of stuff. Just the convenience of it. So maybe we started on this VR path a little bit too early, before the technology was quite ready for mainstream adoption.
Yeah, I guess I don't know. It felt like it was the time, but it always does, I guess, huh? Yeah. All right. Are we good to move on, I guess?
Let's get positive now.
Okay. I mean, I don't know if this is like completely positive or negative, but I mean, I guess it is overall positive, which is that the Rift is basically tied with the Vive now on the Steam market share, which kind of suggests that the Rift has outsold the Vive And I don't know. I feel like this might have been expected for me just because of the price of the Rift. And I always recommend the Rift for people who want to get into VR. So I feel like the Rift's steadily been increasing. But we just kind of have numbers to support that now. It's pretty much tied.
Yeah. So those numbers, they don't talk about growth per se. It's purely market share. So what I'm hoping this means is that the market has grown some, and that within that growth, the Rift has had a larger portion of the growth, which would make sense because of the sale and the price point. And right now, so like I said, they're effectively tied, which in terms of, fanboy wars, does that mean the Rift is now sold more than the Vive? Because you have to think that there is some subset of the Rift owning population who doesn't hop onto Steam. I don't know. It's probably very, very minor, but still, I would think that means that perhaps, contraire, Vive. I'm sure everyone with a Vive has connected it to Steam and has played, the lab or something. Like, I mean, you have to connect it to Steam. Can you go through that setup pretty much without having a Steam account? I don't know. I can't remember that far back into last year whether or not I had to have an account at the time or not. But so it was just a story to kind of bring up and talk about growth. And that's what I meant by moving to a positive story, is like, I think this speaks to growth and not necessarily the fanboyism between the Rift versus the Vive.
I think if nothing else, it shows, because we knew from previous reports that the Vive was sort of obviously way ahead of the Rift for so long in terms of Steam market share. Now that it's more or less even, I think it goes to show, if nothing else, that price is significant in terms of people buying these headsets. These numbers have come up since the Oculus Rift price drop. So more people are going to adopt these headsets as the price comes down. And I think both HTC and Oculus are both aiming to get headsets which are lowering the price of them while sort of maintaining a decent quality, rather than pushing out to sort of Pimax levels, wide field of view, high resolution, that kind of stuff. And I think that's the best way to get people in VR. Just give them headsets for just a couple of $100. I think a lot more people will be getting these things.
Yeah, I mean, I do have friends too who are also like excited and they want to get a Rift once they get enough money to save up. So like, and I have people on both sides. I have friends who like don't touch their VR. They bought it, they don't touch it, and then I have kind of the opposite of that. So
well, you need strange. You need to introduce some of your friends to some of your other friends.
Yeah.
Although that's not good for the market. No new sales will be generated. It's the GameStop method.
True. Yeah. Steve and Gary, do you want to talk about something?
So last week I had mentioned that I myself had backed the Pimax Kickstarter, and I spoke for Gary since he wasn't here to speak for himself, because he had also backed it. And I also talked about how, we both backed it because we wanted to kind of reserve a place in line. There was a lot of hype being generated, and that neither of us was really sure. So I decided right before it ended that I wasn't going to continue to back it. And it was a very hard decision because, man, I was falling sucker to a lot of the hype. Not sucker, I shouldn't say that. Like I did not fall sucker to anything. I was watching a lot of videos and reading, and Sweet Viver put out, he got it out pretty late, but he put a nice review of his experience demoing the Pimax on a couple of occasions in Amsterdam days or whatever that was over there. So I have a lot of faith in the product. I think it will be the first Gen 2 headset on the market, unless HTC swoops in like with no notification, no warning on the market, and says, here, we're announcing Vive 2. And it also has 200 degree of freedom or field of view and everything. And
too much freedom.
Thanks. I screw up. So I decided to pull my support for it only because I just didn't feel like having that out there and just having this this unfulfilled shipment and tracking it and just being so vested in just keeping up with it. Like, it just seems like it was a little bit tedious to always wonder, oh man, I hope this is going to ship, because it just has this sort of, I don't want to say anxiety, but it just sort of has this feeling like you're just constantly for months wondering, when is this thing going to ship? Is it going to ship on time? Are they going to be able to deliver on their promises? And I think, like, I trust Pimax. I don't think they're going to run off like the stem thing you bought and I don't think they're going to just not ship something, but at the same time, I'm not convinced that they'll necessarily hit the January timetable. So I decided to pull my support, but I very much, like, if I could go out and buy the V2 prototype as it currently stands for $499, I probably would. Like, I think the prototype has shown enough that it's going to change the VR market, then it's a big shift from the Rift and from the Vive. So I just really didn't feel like dealing with the whole Kickstarter thing, is why I decided to pull it. Gary?
Yeah, I backed out too. But let me first say, if you've backed this product, I don't necessarily think you've made a bad choice. In fact, as soon as I sort of unbacked it, I debacked it, or whatever you want to call it, I had a little bit of regret about doing it straight off. So part of me, it's £400. That's how much it translates to over here in the UK. It's costing me £400. I can't really afford to just throw that money away at the moment. Now, I don't think with this particular Kickstarter, I don't think anybody that's backed it will be throwing their money away. The reports we're getting from this product are everybody is pretty much positive about this. And also Pimax have a proven track record, of manufacturing. They manufactured this 4K headset, which by all accounts was pretty good from anybody who bought that, with the understanding because it only had 3 degrees of freedom. But it was a very good headset. They shipped 30,000 of those. So they've got a history of manufacturing headsets and getting them out there. So I don't think there's a problem with Pimax as a company. They've actually got quite a lot of my confidence in getting this out. But at the same time, this is only the second thing I've ever backed on Kickstarter. And the first one was a game which I only had to back £12. So this is in a completely different league to that. And I've spoken to people that have backed Kickstarter before, and some of those people have had bad experiences. And I'll say it again, I don't think Pimax will give anybody that's backed this a bad experience, because I have a certain amount of confidence in them. But at the same time, £400, I can't really afford to just throw that out there and get back a product which doesn't quite meet my expectations. The only other thing I'd say is that if there is a delay, and again, they've got a proven track record of manufacturing this kind of stuff, so there possibly won't be a delay. But if there is a delay, a month probably wouldn't have concerned me. 2 months, again, probably wouldn't bother me too much. But if there was to be a 6-month delay, at that point, I'd be thinking, what announcements are going to be happening and what innovations are going to be happening between the time I was supposed to get that headset and the time I actually get that headset. Now, this is all sort of hypothetical, and it's sort of looking at the worst case scenario. I don't necessarily think that Pimax will delay it by 6 months. So you'll probably be, all of you people that have backed it will be very, very pleased with the headset that you end up getting. And what you got to remember as well, these are prototypes. These are early prototypes that people are demoing. So the final product will presumably be at least on par with these, and presumably better than these. So I think overall, from what they've shown already, it's a good product and people won't be disappointed. It's a good price. If it fulfills what they're saying, it's a good price as well.
Can I ask you guys a quick Pimax question? Because I've been watching this more from the outside. But I've been in some of these Pimax threads, and when they hit the $4 million mark, right? Okay, so they hit like 4.3 million or something. That's where it closed at. And the last thing that we heard was like, you can choose whether you want thumbstick or trackpad. And so, but this one guy was in the thread, and he was just making an observation, and he might be completely off the mark. But what he was saying is, guys, don't you realize that every time they achieve another one of these extra milestones, it's going to add like another month delay? Like what he was saying Okay, so this is not me, but what he was saying is anybody that thinks they're getting a Pimax headset in January is off their rocker. It's not happening. You're looking at like April, May, June by the time this thing really comes out because of all the milestones that they've hit. Now they have to add all these other components to it. It has to go through a process. Kickstarter has all these rules and regulations, so they're required to deliver that. I don't know if any of this is like if he's going overboard with his fear on that, or was that part of the reason you guys maybe backed out too?
No, I think that guy doesn't know what they are talking about. Like most of the eye tracking, Pimax has come out to say, no, you're not getting that when we ship these. This is coming. They were timing it for mid to late next year, so they don't have to ship that. Like if they had to hold the shipments, then yeah, it would be a big delay to get the eye tracking module. But the ones that I imagine will ship with it are like the additional facial interface. Like I see no reason they couldn't ship that with the headset. The little the prescription glasses frame insert, like it's not actual prescription glasses, it's just what you would snap your prescription lenses into. I'd see no reason they couldn't ship that when the headset's ready.
In January, you think people will actually start getting these?
Well, that's the right. You don't know. Like, there's no guarantee. But if they have all the components lined out, right, they've already sourced the displays. They've already worked with whomever they're buying the displays from. They've already worked with whoever they're going to do that's going to kind of do the blow mode for the plastic shell. They've already worked out that contract. They've already worked out who's ever putting the little blue LEDs in it. Like they've already worked out all their agreements for the parts, the supply chain, so to speak. Then the last thing they have to do is the actual assembly, the manufacturing, and that could slip. So where the risk, I think, is, and I do work in manufacturing, where the risk is if any of those contracts can't deliver. Like, what if they find out 6 weeks from now that the people delivering the displays screwed up and had a quality control issue, and half the displays have a green line running down the middle of them or something? Then that's going to delay Pimax. Or if I don't know about the Chinese market, so to speak, but if they're like what would be the equivalent of union type negotiations, like what we would have here in the States, that cause the factory floor to be in a shutdown state because they're doing labor negotiations or something. Anything like that can cause a delay. So I think with what they've shown with their prototypes, that they are far enough along in the process that they probably sourced all the components, and the last step is just to take delivery of those components, which they would do with this $4 million capital infusion. They now can it's kind of like buying a house, right? Like you go out and buy a house, you don't take delivery for 30 days or whatever as all the closing set up, and then on that day that you come to close, you got to bring the check to either buy the house, or you have to have your lending your whatever bank you're borrowing from writing the check, and it all be there, and then you take delivery of the house. So I see it as the Kickstarter working that way. They've already worked up all the deals and all the arrangements. Now the Kickstarter's ended. They've had this infusion of capital, and then they go in and they close the deals on all these arrangements.
Last week, there was all this stuff about the refresh rates on the displays, and just what you were talking about there, Steve, about the if they've sourced all these displays and this kind of stuff. There was a little bit of a concern at one point during the last week where somebody who had demoed this Pimax headset, they were talking to one of the people from Pimax who was demoing it, one of the representatives, and they were talking to them, and they were saying about the refresh rate. You know, it was running at 75 hertz in that particular demo, and they were saying about what is the problem with this refresh rate? Why is it 75 hertz and stuff like this? And they said, we're sourcing displays from different places at the moment, and we're trying to find the correct one to go for. And that threw a lot of things up, because people were saying how they've not even got a definitive source for these displays. It turns out that particular representative, and they highlighted this, Pimax did highlight this, to say pretty much that these representatives are not sort of got all the information available to them. They have got these displays, and these displays are being used in another product. And this is a final thing I want to just mention about this. They reference another product which is using the same displays. And Chris, you mentioned something about this last week when I watched the show, and I thought about your comments on this. Now, this points to the fact that there is another product out there. I think it's by Qualcomm, is what they in fact ended up saying. Now, whether this is going to be the same kind of thing, it could just be using one of these displays. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to have like the higher field of view or anything like that. It's a completely different product. But they did say that they've achieved 90 hertz stable frame rate in this other product. So there's no reason why Pimax shouldn't be able to achieve the same in this product. But
well, that
yeah.
there suggests that whatever that other product is dual display, though. Because they should have
Well,
no issues hitting 90 hertz with a single display.
Yeah.
Right? Like, because it's the bandwidth to hit 90 hertz on two 4K displays or whatever the input resolution is, the 2560 by 1440.
Yeah.
So to me, that suggests, I know where you're going, Gary, but that suggests that whatever this other product is using two displays.
Well, yeah, I mean, I was just going to get that point as well. Like, they did say that they are using DisplayPort 1.4, which is perfectly capable of doing this because it's a 1440p resolution that's being upscaled within the headset. So DisplayPort 1.4 is able to throw that out there and do it without any bandwidth issues. But what my understanding of these problems with these refresh rates is down to the actual display itself. And maybe I'm getting the wrong end of the stick there, but because they were talking about how they're not able to get 90 hertz stable, and they said that as a Kickstarter disclaimer, they actually said that this is sort of a high risk goal really of theirs to get to 90 hertz stable. They said that they'll get to 82 hertz and probably 85 hertz without a problem. Getting that extra little part to 90 hertz is for some reason a problem. There shouldn't be a problem with the bandwidth that they've got. But when they were talking about this problem, and I won't stay on this too much longer, but when they were talking about this problem, that they were going into the nitty gritty of things like actual connection quality on GPUs that can affect it. Length of the cable, as we know, it can degrade, and that's fine. But the fact that they're trying to hit this 90 hertz with such fine parameters, it's a little bit concerning to me, because if you've got any small problem within that chain of events that's happening between your GPU and the headset, you're not going to hit 90 hertz. And I guess this is all coming down to sort of the tests that they're trying to do in order to guarantee the kind of product that they're going to ship in the end. I think it's good that they came out here and said were transparent about the refresh rate in the end, so people can make an informed decision about it. I just wanted to bring the refresh rate issue up because it was quite a big deal towards the end of their Kickstarter.
Yeah, I don't know, where did 90 hertz come from? Like, where did that become the de facto standard? Like, if you drop to 89 hertz, suddenly the experience turned to shit. Like, I don't know where. Like,
No, I don't
85. I mean, I get that it's 60 is probably too low, even though a lot of PlayStation experiences run at 60 frames. But 75, 80, 82, 85, maybe just fine. Like, I'm not convinced that 90 is this magic number that 89 becomes unacceptable.
No,
Yeah,
I think
I mean-
any. Sorry, Chris, go ahead.
Oh yeah, I know Oculus kind of went out and said that 90 is the magic number, but with their research, but there's not really any, like we can't really test that. I remember the Dev Kit 2 was 75 hertz, and like there was a big difference from that. But I think you're right. If it's like 85 or 82 even, I think people probably still be happy with it.
Yeah, I think any sort of perceived sort of downgrade in the current specs of the headset could be sort of a problem for some people. I don't necessarily think 85 hertz is going to be a problem. You probably won't even notice, but
Yeah. Here's the thing. What if this headset is the LG headset with two displays? They redid it. It's coming out soon. Whoa. Mind blown.
Yep, I'd buy it. Sorry, Pimax, but I would just inherently trust LG more.
Yeah. I agree. It goes back to that name. There's a bunch of smaller topics. Who put the first one? Because I didn't actually see anything about that. About Skyrim.
I think I did. So Skyrim. I think so. Bethesda brought I think GameSpot, IGN, several of the big people. They didn't invite us. I don't know how our invite must still be in the mail or whatever. But like they brought a lot of the media in and did a private showing of Doom VFR and Skyrim VR for PSVR. And so a lot of those big media outlets, they had gameplay videos of it, extended kind of gameplay videos of it. And so all along, up until this showing, we had always seen this older build of Skyrim. And I don't know if we've really seen much from Doom VFR, but this older build of Skyrim, it was sort of a tailored experience. It was custom made for demonstration. You couldn't grab items. You couldn't. You only had the one locomotion method, and so there's been a lot of speculation. We've talked about it on the show, like, oh man, is Skyrim are they ever going to be able to pull it off? And what we've seen from the videos now is that they got the locomotion working. They're showing what appears to be the final build or the near final build, and the locomotion's working. You can locomote with the left move controller by pressing the move button. I still think that's inherently broken. But the point that I'm making here is that Skyrim VR no longer looks like it could be a horrible experience. It looks like they may have it to where it needs to be, and that people may really enjoy playing Skyrim in VR. I'm very much looking forward to it. I'm going to be picking this up. I'm not sure how I'm going to pick it up yet. I may get it on disc so that I can trade it in. And I could see myself playing with motion controls initially and being like, well, it's cool, but then reverting to a gamepad. Only because I don't like locomotion that's tethered to one hand that doesn't give you the ability to strafe. And so like a lot of touchpad locomotion games that you can, even though you kind of have to point your hand in the direction you want to walk, you can still strafe a little bit. You still have some more control. With the PlayStation Move, you don't have a thumbstick, so all you have is that button in the middle that you press, and it's aptly named the Move button. And like, you can't strafe with it. I don't see, like, I'm not going to want to wiggle my hand like this to strafe back and forth while trying to dodge arrows or something from a goblin. So I could see myself at some point reverting to a DualShock when playing this, but still great news. And Skyrim is probably my most looked forward to title right now. And it's only because it's coming before Doom and Fallout.
Cool. Yeah. Another little thing is the Stranger Things experience is announced as like the Face Your Fears update. So it was just kind of an announcement that Face Your Fears on Gear VR is going to be getting a Stranger Things update. I think this just kind of makes the general population, like the average people, very excited because a lot of people like Stranger Things. I personally haven't seen it, but I know, a lot of people I know watch it. So that might help sell more units or at least be something fun to try.
Watch it. You have all kinds of free time. You're in college.
Overrated.
No. My family, well, my wife and I shouldn't say my family. My kids aren't watching it, but we binged through the second season. I think it's a really good show. Like, I think they do 80s really well. Like, something about the characters, like, they're convincingly 80s people. Like, I don't know. I was born in 81. So like most of the 80s, I didn't live it directly, like, and have vivid memories with the exception of sort of the late 80s. But I feel like the characters and like the guy in the Firebird or whatever, he just seems authentically 80s. Like, I don't know. To me, I think it's a great show. You should watch it.
Cool. Okay.
The characters are good. And like they have the cars and that like the houses, the interiors for the houses, like they did some really good jobs, but it's almost too much of like Centipede and Donkey Kong. Like, it's almost like they're trying too hard. And then one thing I read about Stranger Things for this new season is that they're always using walkie-talkies, and somehow they have these crystal clear walkie-talkies that have unusual technology back in the 80s, where basically they've got cell phones is what they have. They have cell phones, but they're pretending it's walkie-talkies. I haven't seen the whole second season. It's good. It's still good, but I think it's just a wee bit overrated.
Okay, cool. Also, okay, you go ahead. What?
I didn't want you to miss it, but they have an announcement where it's Stranger Things experience is also coming to PlayStation VR.
Oh, okay.
I was just throwing that in. It wasn't just Oculus Rift, and I liked Face the Fears, the version we have on the Rift, and I actually hate that they're not updating the Rift version. Like, it doesn't make any sense to me.
I agree. There's all these weird fragmentation with these type of deals with movies and stuff. It's weird. All right, next thing is also a tiny story, but Logitech is kind of making this API where you can have a keyboard in VR and you connect your Vive tracker. Are those out? No,
I
right?
don't know. I have no clue.
I don't think so. But anyway, if you have a Vive tracker, if you're a developer, you clip it onto your Logitech gaming keyboard, and then the keyboard shows up in VR. And kind of the cool thing they're trying to do is using the front-facing camera of the Vive sensor. You can see your fingers and you can see where you're typing on the keyboard. This sounds super cool, but I just wish it worked for things other than a Logitech keyboard, because I don't have one. I don't really have a desire to upgrade my keyboard, but if this was a more universal API that someone else was developing, I'd be really happy about it. I don't know.
I guess
That thing about the hands using the front facing camera is a really good idea. I'm wondering why we haven't seen that before, but I guess because it's not the same as like having a leap motion or anything like that. It's just displaying your hands. They're not actually within the VR world in terms of like interaction or anything like that. It doesn't really know where your hands are. It's purely there for you to see them. So I was looking at this video and I was thinking, why haven't we seen something like that before? But I guess it's very limited in how it can be used, but it's interesting nonetheless.
Does it have to be a specific model? Like is this a specific Logitech keyboard that has this? Because if they're going to represent it in VR, it has to be the right, like, because some keyboards are split and there's all sorts of different arrangements there. I think it's a great idea, but like, how do you pull it up? Like if you're playing, is it?
They said that it's going to be, they said it's going to be an object that always stays, kind of like how whatever the OVR overlay stuff was, where like you always have an overlay, so like your keyboard would always be there, I guess.
So if I'm playing the gallery and I turn around and look behind me, my keyboard is just going to be always floating there,
I guess. I mean,
that's no good. Like, you'd
I
have
think
to
it's just for
turn it off.
productivity. I don't know.
Yeah,
I like it, but I want it to be universal, especially because keyboards seem like too niche to have to get one keyboard and a Vive tracker to make it work.
well, I'd like it just so I can force close games. Like, still a year and a half into VR, like sometimes you close a game and it just doesn't close, which is a stupid problem. And anyways.
You know what I always thought we were going to get is the little Steam, the little things that are on the headset, right? The little sensors. I thought we would get like little sticky versions. We'd buy a pad. It would have like 10 of them, right? And they would all have serial numbers. And we could take one off and put it on our coffee cup. And then we go into Steam VR. We type in the serial number. We put in the rough dimensions of the coffee cup. It would have several different 3D modeled objects that would be similar. We could scale it. And there's your coffee cup. It's in Steam VR. And you put one on the corners of your keyboard. They're little sticky. They're like little sticky notes. Why can't we do that? But I guess not.
It gets easier if we were inside out. It's that outside in, is those sensors have to communicate back to a dongle or to the headset itself. So they got to have battery in them. They got to have
power. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true. I mean, I don't know about you guys. My keyboard has a USB port. If there was like a strip I could put on, kind of like a LED strip on the top that had lighthouse sensors that communicates back, I'd probably buy it. I don't know. Yeah. Some company that's listening, make that. Thanks. The last thing is Echo Arena is now permanently free. It was originally sponsored by Intel for like the first 3 months of operations, so anyone could get it for free, but now Oculus has went ahead and paid Ready at Dawn to keep it free, because I'm sure a lot of people kind of want that. Like when you're buying a Rift, that's one of the things I tell people to try out, so if it was paid for, I feel like it kind of ruins some of the value proposition of getting a Rift. So I think it makes sense. But anyone have anything to add? Yeah.
Did it ever go paid? Was there like a period of time that it cost money?
No, it was going to, but they never did.
How much were they going to charge for it? You might know.
Good question.
$20.
I don't think they ever
20
said.
bucks.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
20.
Okay. So that's it for the news. We can get into some games, I guess. Who played more of the first game that wants to start talking about it?
Go ahead, Anthony.
Yeah. Stifled.
You're on mute.
Stifled. So we're going to talk about Stifled.
Sure.
Because really the only new game that I know of that we got this last week was Stifled by Gatai Games. Now this is for PlayStation VR, but all you Vive and Oculus owners out there, just stay in your shoes because it is coming to you guys as well. So you might want to listen to our our quick little discussion on this. Steve, I don't know how far Steve has gotten into this. I haven't gotten super far. I'll just give you a quick rundown on my take of it. Like the first day when Stifled came out, that first day, I got into it, and I was really looking forward to this game just because they had a unique design philosophy around the game. Basically, the concept is it really takes advantage of your microphone on your headset. So if you make any kind of noise at all, you have to calibrate your mic before you start playing. You make like a whisper noise, and then you make a louder noise, and it kind of calibrates your mic. And then once you're in the experience, I don't know if you're supposed to be like a blind person or something where you have some kind of echolocation abilities or whatever. But what happens is if you make a noise, like you'll say, hello, hello, or, something, you just make a sound. And then what it does is your environment that you in, it kind of lights it up a little bit. And you start off in like a regular apartment or house that's kind of similar to duck season a little bit. And then it morphs into this mystery where you're looking for your wife, and now you're in the darkness, and you're in this underground like sewer system or something, and it kind of goes off the rails a little bit as far as like, I mean, it's like all of a sudden you're in a regular house, and then boom, all of a sudden I'm in like this underground sewer with these weird red baby monster things that you encounter every once in a while. And so you're in complete darkness when you're in the sewers, and you make a noise and it lights up a little bit of your environment, almost like wireframe graphics. Like if you've ever watched one of those DVDs where they're showing how they made Star Wars and they show it all wireframe mode, it's almost like just black and white wireframes for your environment. And if you talk really loud, like if you shout, boom, it lights it up farther, and you can see farther in the distance. Of course, the downside is there are these enemy creatures that you have to sneak by. At first, I didn't know that. I thought there was combat. And so I was really, the only thing you can do with these enemies is you can pick up rocks and throw them. And so there's this weird baby creature that I had to deal with, this monster, and I was picking up the rock and I was throwing it at its head, and picking up another rock and throwing it at its head. And it seemed like it was pissing the thing off, but it wasn't killing it. And then later on, I figured out, oh no, you're not actually supposed to try to kill these things. You're supposed to try to distract it, like throw the rock over there. It splashes over there, which creates sound. It goes to investigate that, and then you can sneak around. Now, on it, I mean, we're going to get to Steve. Steve will have his take on it. I'll just say my take is the idea, the concept of this game was more appealing to me than the actual end execution. The first day I played it, I kind of thought, this is kind of a dud. I've played it more, and now I don't think that it's a dud. But I also am not raving about this. I'm not going to call up my buddies or tell somebody, dude, you got to pick up Stifled on PSVR. It's awesome. And actually, my excitement level for like the Vive and Rift versions have kind of decreased a little bit. There's still some cool stuff going on here, but ultimately, part of the problem that we have too is that our headsets, they don't get completely black. So you're not in absolute darkness. You always have that Mura effect. So why don't we kick it over to Steve? Steve, what were your thoughts on it?
They're not that dissimilar from yours, really. I think without spoiling it, I think I know why you kind of have that sharp change in scenery or in where you are, because as you said, you kind of begin in your house and you're a blind person, and you have some vision. So the whole game isn't in this wireframe view. You have some typical kind of rendered environments in the house and whatnot, but the mechanic is there, and this is where I really agree with you. Like when I was reading and first seeing this game, I thought, man, it was really unique, really interesting. And it is unique and very interesting, but it's also a bit laborious. Like when I was playing it at night, my kids were asleep, and I'm up here where I play games. I'm on the second floor. My wife is on the main floor below, but we kind of have like this open floor plan. And I felt embarrassed at times because I'm like, hello, like trying to get it to light up so I could see. And like I was just waiting for her to come come up the stairs and go, "Who are you talking to?" Like, because I would blurt out. You would say, I think you'll find that you won't just say random like questions. You'll probably whatever word you choose to say, that'll be the word that you just kind of keep repeating. And I think they call it a pulse, is what they call it in the game. So you do this pulse, and then you get a brief 1-second view or so of the rest of this world in wireframe, and it helps you navigate this. It's basically a maze. Like there's one area you're like in the sewer, and it's really just a maze, and you're trying to find your way through it, and you have to do it with this audio mechanic. So what I did was I recalibrated it to make it really sensitive, so that all I had to do was just blow, and because I didn't want to be embarrassed by my wife making fun of me, but also because it was easier and I didn't want to wake my kids up, and I kept would and then walk a few steps and then walk a few more steps, and then it kind of got to be like, well, it's just kind of pointless. Like I'd just rather it be a button now, like make the trigger or something, and maybe that's an option. I didn't explore that. The game itself though, like, it does have some intense moments. Like the first time you run up on one of the little midget creatures, like they are in red. Like everything's in black and white, but anything dealing with an enemy is this really, really bright red. And if you don't, like the first time you don't know what's going on, like all of a sudden you start seeing this red color, and so it triggers you, and okay, this must mean something, likely an enemy, because it's red. Red means danger, means stop. It means, naturally red means things. And everything goes dark, and I didn't really know what to do, and everything was dark, and then a sound was made, and then this thing is just like right here, and it was really intense. And the audio is really kind of jacked up. Like they play a lot with the jacked up, not in a good way, not that it's screwed up, but jacked up in a amplified kind of way. There's a lot of dynamic range in the audio, and because it's a very audio centric game, like as you're walking through these sewers, there'll be like dripping water, and then over there in the distance you'll see the little pulse from the dripping water just lighting up a short area of the wireframe graphics. So it's like anything you throw a rock and you'll see when it hits a wall, it'll light up that area. So it's a really unique mechanic. But then as you're trying to creep around these enemies, and they make these screeching noises, and if you screw up and then they're just like right in your face and make that screeching noise, it was pretty intense. And so I thought that was really good. But all in all, it's a game worth looking into if you can look it up. I don't think it's a blind recommend for everybody. I was trying to look up the price. I don't remember what it was.
$20.
That's where I was going to thought it was 20. So at $20, it's not a bad buy. I don't know how long it is yet. So, if it's only 3 hours long, maybe that changes the proposition a little bit.
I think it's pretty short.
But, it's interesting. I'm not recommending it, but I'm not blindly recommending it and saying everyone listening to this should run out and buy this game right now because it's the best thing since sliced bread. It's not that. It's kind of middle of the road. It's not a bad experience, and it does something unique.
One other quick thing I just wanted to say before we move on is that I'm still trying to play it because I kind of want to work my way through it. So far, I've only seen this baby enemy, so I don't know if there's any other enemy. But the one frustration I really do have with it is I'm dying a lot. Like the baby, because this red baby thing, it's crying, it's walking around, it's crying, and then it like throws a temper tantrum. It's kind of funny how the baby reacts, but what happens is it jumps on your face, and then you're basically a dead duck, and you die over and over again. And I don't mind games where you die over and over again, but what I do mind is that it takes so long to get back into that part and for it to start over. One of the brilliant things about Super Hot, you die, but bam, you're instantly back in there. And that just changes the way you can play games from a standpoint where it becomes incredibly irritating when you die. But if you're instantly back in there, it's not that big of a deal. stifled, I die, and then it's like 2 minutes and 33 seconds until I'm back into it. I have to go through the loading screens, and that just becomes a little bit irritating. But the use of sound is really cool. What Steve was talking about, you open up a door and the creaking noise of the door might light up the whole entire room, so it really uses sound.
That sounds cool. Steve, do you want to talk about Castle Storm?
Castle Storm VR on PlayStation VR. I think there are multiple games called Castle Storm in one form or the other, and I think we talked about a Vive or Steam Castle Storm. This is a completely different game. I picked it up for $2, $3 on the big PlayStation sale a couple weeks ago. I guess when they had the anniversary sale. And Castle Storm VR is feels like very much like a translated mobile game, maybe. But it does a lot of cool things that I thought were interesting. One, could possibly be the best looking PlayStation VR game I've played, period. And it's very cartoony, very sharp. I think they have it super sampled out the wazoo on a PlayStation VR, which is kind of a rare thing. And it's very cartoony. You're kind of sitting in this medieval theater. It's kind of weird because you got wooden chairs and you have like a popcorn bucket and a soda bucket, but it's all done in medieval things. It's not modern era. And there's a projector. It's like a movie theater. And then on the screen is like a 2D diorama type game. And it's just like a tower defense type game where you're shooting with a trebuchet. But then you see cutscenes in this theater. But then when you actually go into play, you're in the world. Now it's third person or, kind of fixed camera perspective. You're looking side to side, and you're controlling things in the game. There's some simple melee combat. It's a very simple game, and it's not the best game in that sense. But the standouts is that it's cheap. It's not bad type of mobile type experience in terms of like an iPhone, iPad type gameplay, but in VR. So you get all the benefits of being in VR, but it's also very colorful, vibrant, razor sharp. And I honestly don't know how much it retails for normally. Like I said, I picked it up for $3. So like if one day you see it in the store because of it's a sale and it's $2 or $3, it's worth picking up and spending some time with it for that.
Cool. I guess I can talk about Prison Boss and then I'll hand it over to Steve. I remember Tech Ninja last week played Prison Boss, and he said it's a really good game that we should be checking out on the podcast. So we got a key for it, I think.
Yeah,
right?
Trebuchet, the developers, they saw the episode and said, hey, well, you guys need to try it out since, you hadn't played it, and they gave us a key. So go ahead, back to you.
Yeah. So, I mean, I haven't played too much of it, but what I have played is really fun and really compelling. Essentially, the main mechanic, at least at the start, is you have to roll cigarettes, make cigarettes, and you're in a prison cell. You're trying to buy and sell things to kind of up your reputation and up your money in the prison with all the prisoners. So they want cigarettes. You make cigarettes at nighttime, and you gotta kind of hide everything when this boss, like the night guard comes around and looks in your cell, make sure you're not doing anything fishy, and then so I mean it's fun though. And I saw there was some other things like writing love letters. I don't know, I tried to do that. I didn't really understand the mechanic, but like there's different items you can craft at nighttime and start selling to people. And overall it looks really fun. It's a really good use of room scale. I really like it when there's a good room scale game, and this is one of them because you're already in a prison cell, so there's no locomotion needed. So it really enhances the immersion for me. But I do want to play more of this, and I definitely think it's a good game to play with other people. Like if I had people over, I think I'd want to kind of bring everyone into it because it is pretty darn fun. What do you think, Steve?
No, I'm surprised by this too, because like it's not an early access game. It's really polished. It looks really good. Everything just works, and it's fun. It's got a good skin to it, so to speak. It's the play is not all that dissimilar from maybe like Job Simulator. It's very much an interactive game. You're doing things with your hands the whole time. You're doing gestures. And like Chris said, it scales to your room scale space, I believe. Like the edges of my prison cell are mapped perfectly with the walls of my play space, and you completely interact within this this box, your prison cell. So it's very smartly designed in that sense. But like Technin Joe said last week, it's a crafting game at its core. So what happens in the very beginning, you have materials to roll cigarettes. And then at night, you can control when it's night and when it's day by going over to a clock on the wall. At night, you roll cigarettes, and however many you roll with whatever materials you'll have, you'll be able to fulfill what they call jobs. So maybe a guard needs 5 smokes, and so you trade those 5 smokes. You'll get more materials to craft with. You'll unlock different items. Like I think the second thing I unlocked was the ability to write short erotic novels. So like maybe someone else in prison is hankering for an erotic novel, so you'll craft that and trade, and you get money, and it's just a constant like crafting simulator. You buy more furniture to hide your stuff in so the guard doesn't catch you, like different shelves and things to hide your stuff in, but it's all done in room scale. Like you got to bend down to put things inside your little shelf cubby thing. This is a really good game. It's $20, and I kind of get, like, there was a lot of YouTubers and stuff that were like really talking this game up, and I get it now. Like for whatever reasons, and I think I mentioned it last week, we won't always get to every game because there's only so much time in the day. But it's a good game. We kind of missed over it when it released, and I'm glad we're able to talk about it now because I think it's one of the better games of that style for me. Like I'm not a fan of Job Simulator, but I'm a fan of Prison Boss.
Yeah. How do you make the erotic novels? I'm trying to figure it out.
Well, you would think they could give you a gesture where you would like draw certain shapes, but no. They keep it PG-13 enough that basically you hold the paper out and then you hold the pencil and then you just kind of scribble. You just kind of wiggle back and forth to simulate some writing, and then then the erotic novel is just crafted.
Okay. But yeah, I mean, overall, it's a great game. It's something I'm going to be playing more of. It looked like there are different even levels, but I haven't gotten to any of those yet. But I mean, overall, it looks like a very full-featured game that's a lot of fun, and it looks great. So for those who like Job Simulator, you'll definitely like this. And I mean, even Steve doesn't really like Job Simulator, but he liked this. So check that out. Next game is something I played a little bit of last week, and I also played it this week. Skyfront VR. It is a first-person shooter where you kind of fly around a level. I don't know. Like you basically have these like vacuums that suck air and push them out behind you. So it's fun, but it's definitely a motion sickness inducing game just from the nature of it. It's basically complete free movement, and you can go way too fast. Like if you have 2 vacuums, you can go super fast, and I don't know. I was getting a little bit sick in it, but
so this is a multiplayer game, right? I think it's in beta still.
Yeah, it's in beta, and last week I only got to play with bots, and oh my god, it was just terrible. The bots are really bad. The AI is terrible. They just kind of take a direct line to you, and like, I don't know. I absolutely hated the game last week, but this week there was some other guy online, thankfully. One other guy, so I got to do a 1v1 with him, and it was a lot of fun. The controls end up being intuitive at first. They're very clumsy. Like on the thumbstick, you move up to get the vacuum, you move left to get one gun, right to get another gun, so that's how you switch guns quickly, and I think it makes a lot of sense after you kind of get used to it. And overall, it was fun. I mean, I don't know, like, I need to play it with other people. I need like a full match to really get the gist of it, but it is fun. I mean, I absolutely hated it last week, but this week, I think there's something to it. But I don't know. It might not get that big just because there's, the motion sickness aspect of it.
Is it combat? Like what are you doing in this battle when you're playing against this other guy?
Yeah, you're flying around. There's like hovering buildings and things, and you're trying to shoot him while he's flying around too. It's a little bit hard to hit people, to be honest, because they're really tiny and you gotta kind of aim and hit people. But I don't know. I think it's going somewhere, but right now it's not really that great. I don't know. It's fun I don't know. I'm very iffy on it. I mean, if you're, you need to have a full game, or else I don't think it'd be fun at all. Like playing with bots is absolutely terrible, so it needs a bigger user base for sure. Yeah, so Gary, do we want to talk about this game, or do we want to save it? Or I know people have already talked about it because it was on PSVR for a while, right?
Yeah, I'll just mention it quickly. Theseus, you're right. It came out on PSVR, and I think Steve and Anthony, I think you've already played this on PSVR, if I'm right. Yeah. So I jumped into this. I haven't really played too much VR this past week, but this game, it's a third person. It actually reminded me a lot in some ways of Kronos. It's sort of got sections in it which are fixed camera, and it's third person, and you're moving around these levels, similar way to Kronos. But you've also got sections in it where it's sort of over the shoulder third person as well, and you can follow your character through the world. Graphics are very impressive. I didn't know anything about this game before going in, so I was actually quite pleasantly surprised by it. It's a little bit slow paced. Now I've probably played maybe 20-30 minutes of it so far, so I'm not very far in, although I don't know how long the game is. I'm hearing reports it's not too long, so. But what I've played has been interesting. I expected combat. Now, I've not experienced any combat so far, so I don't know if there is some combat in it like Kronos or anything like that. It doesn't appear to be like that from this stage. But going in and working my way through these levels is just an enjoyable experience anyway. It's got some good voice acting in there as well, I think. And just again, I was talking about the spectacle within VR and certain things a few weeks ago, like in Heart of the Emberstone, the scale of certain things that are happening in that, and also in this, it's got that similar kind of vibe, really. But yeah, I enjoyed what I played. What did you think, Chris?
Yeah, me too. I probably played also like a half hour ish, enough to at least see the monster or whatever.
Yeah.
It's a little bit finicky at times. I feel like the mechanics aren't the best. Like it's a lot of just like press A to jump, press B to, I don't know. And you have to be in a very specific place. I got stuck many times. Like, can I climb the staircase? No, but I can go up this rock for some reason instead. So I don't know. So just a little bit of finickiness there. But I mean, it looks great. Like the graphics I thought were excellent. And I really enjoyed it, what I played of it. And I don't know, like I felt like I wasn't playing that long, and then I realized it was like already time for the podcast when I stopped playing. So I think it's good, but
yeah, I think there's always a problem in terms of like the finickiness of the controls and stuff like this. There's a problem with these third-person games that do this kind of stuff, where you're switching cameras and your perspective on the character is changed, and yet if you're still pushing in that direction, your character will still move as if corresponding to your old placement. So then you have to sort of reorientate yourself by using the gamepad, and sometimes you can sort of go in the wrong direction quickly when you switch camera views and stuff like this. But it's sort of an inherent problem with these games that choose to take this kind of third-person view with a fixed camera point of view.
Yeah, and I don't know, like I haven't really played Kronos, or I haven't played Kronos. I need to, but I love what this game just does with the scale of things. So like when things are getting intense, kind of the scale goes more to human scale and things look giant and stuff. But then when you're kind of traversing, things get small and your character is tiny and you're watching it move around. So I really liked the scale transformation aspect of it. But I mean, you know, as I think Steve, you said it's not very long, right? How long would you say it is?
About 2 hours. I played it and beat it on PlayStation VR. I liked the game. I believe it's $20. It's a little bit pricey for the experience. Not a lot of replayability to it. I like the setting. Like it's very much similar to Kronos, as you guys say, but I like the setting maybe a little bit better. It's very gothic, very kind of Dark Soulsy, so to speak, or Bloodborne. So I love the setting. I was very excited when I first saw the announcement for this game, but a little bit underwhelmed. You do get combat, Gary. You do get a sword, but the combat is very sort of one-dimensional. There's not too much to it. It's also like you were describing, Chris. It kind of has that bit of a floaty, finicky kind of feel to it, and I don't think that's really the focus the developer was going for. So this Theseus is a Greek mythology story, and really that's what this is. You're in this labyrinth with the Minotaur, and the resolution, apparently it's been a repetitive cycle over and over and over and over and over, and of you trying to outwit and get past this Minotaur. So it's probably worth completing. I don't regret my time with it. But again, we also got the key for free on PlayStation and also on Steam. And I'd like to check it out on Steam one day if I get time, because I want to see how much better it looks.
Hey, well, I can speak to that because I played when we got this Steam key for it. I was like, well, let me check out the Steam version, because I played it on PS4 Pro. It looks identical. It looks freaking identical. So it's funny that Chris and Gary are both saying that the graphics are really good. I mean, I thought the graphics were good on PS4 Pro, but for some reason, I just naturally assumed that it would just be a little sharper, a little crisper. Of course, I'm not super sampling, so maybe that would have a lot to do with it. But and then as far as the controls of the game, just so people know, it's almost like the first hour that you're in Theseus, you're almost going through a tutorial and they don't give you a lot of agency. Like, I know what Chris is talking about. It's almost like you want to hit a button, you want to do something immediately, but it's kind of slow. It's kind of lethargic how you do things. And then it's like a little bit further on. And like, you actually get to a point where you can start running, where in the beginning you can't run. You're just walking slowly. And then arbitrarily at a certain point, you now have the ability to run. And it's kind of like that with the controls. It's almost like halfway through the game, you actually have real controls.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's a little finicky, but it's immersed me for sure. Like, I feel like I'm in the storyline and I like it. So I'll definitely go back into that. Anthony, did you want to talk about how you finished the Invisible Hours?
Yeah, I just real quick. We're really long on this episode. We did so much news, and it like carried us for a long time. So, but the only thing I wanted to say about Invisible Hours is like my thoughts going into Invisible Hours. Remember a couple of weeks ago, I said it's not really a game; it's the first VR movie. I didn't know how true my statement was. It's actually incredibly true, because what I thought there was a certain point in Invisible Hours where like you're watching this story, things are going on, and then I thought I would get to a certain point where it's like, okay, who do you think who do you think did the murder? And you actually choose somebody and you can get it right or get it wrong, and then maybe you have to go back into the game. There's none of that. As far as I can see, you simply watch this story take place. You can pause the story. Really the only agency that you have in this story is you can pause it. You can grab physical objects that are in the world and examine them closer to look for clues and stuff. You can go into different rooms, hear different things. You can do the story as many times as you want. There's like 4 different chapters. You can go into different rooms and see different stuff. But there was never, Steve, you look kind of shocked, but there's never a part where you actually say this is the murder. And so I'm not going to spoil it, but I finished the entire thing. I saw basically the ending of who did the crime and the whole deal. And, a lot of stuff goes on there at the end, but there's no actual, like, there's no game. There's no game at all. I don't know why they don't just call this the first VR movie. It's the first VR movie. I guess they just didn't think they could sell it for $30.
So what you're saying is there is resolution. You figure out what's happened. You just don't get to choose. You don't get to point your finger at the murderer. You're not the detective. You just witness what's his name? His first and last name's the same. The main guy.
Oh, Gustav.
Yeah, Gustav. So like you just see him solve it, I'm guessing, or whatever. Like you don't.
Yeah, I don't want to spoil it, but okay. Yeah, you get to watch this whole thing, and you can watch it from multiple angles, and you're basically a ghost. And I still love this thing. I still think it's awesome. I just, for some reason, I don't know why, I just had it in my head that, okay, at a certain point, I try to solve this story. I was thinking it was kind of like the Sherlock Holmes, like some of these Sherlock Holmes games where you get to the end and you're like, okay, this is who I think did it. And you either get it right or wrong. And if you get it wrong, you can go back and replay it. Or for some reason, I thought that was going to happen at a certain point. It never did. It was, you're this is basically just a movie. You're viewing a movie. I'm not trying to say that that's bad. I think this is an incredible experience. I think it's a breakthrough experience. Maybe the price is a wee bit on the high side, and I think it should have been advertised as the first VR movie. This is not a game in any way, shape, or form, in my opinion.
I think I'd like to try this actually, because I've heard as well, because it's a story that's taking place, but each of the characters sort of goes off and does their own thing while this movie, this interactive movie, well, it's not even interactive, but this movie is playing, so you can follow different people around at different times during the story. So have you got the inclination to sort of go back and play through it again and maybe follow somebody else's story through this, or does that not even play a part for you in this?
Well, that's what you could do. You could, there was lots of stuff I missed throughout the story. So what you could do is you could go through this, because there's like 8 or 9 characters grand total or something like that. You could go through this and just isolate onto one person and just follow them the entire time and forget about everything else and just follow that one. So there's a lot of replay ability with this, but there's no actual solving of crimes yourself, or there's no, it's not really interactive. The interactivity that you have is the fact that you can teleport anywhere, you can pause it, you can start it up again. I loved being able to teleport around and then hit play and then having the guy like walk toward, I was basically a cameraman is what I was.
I guess we've got LA Noire VR case files coming out soon anyway, so we can use that for the detective kind of stuff, because I think that's a great idea for a game to have this. If they did have some kind of thing where it had some kind of gameplay element through it, where you can sort of get the clues and you don't get the ending until you've solved it, you've got the right person and you've done it in a certain way, I think that would be great for this. Obviously this particular developer wasn't going for that, but
yeah,
still sounds like you enjoyed it.
Yeah, I need to check that out. Like, that's something I'm super interested in like the whole like movie aspect of VR, and I really want to check that out.
Well, how Steve mentioned like the Steam spy for Invisible Hours is like really low. Like, I can't tell you, I truly believe if they had a 10-minute demo, if they just gave people 10 minutes, so many people would buy this. And then they would, at the end, they might be like, oh, this is bullshit. There's no real, it's not even a game. They might have a complaint at the end of it. But I'm telling you, tons of people would buy this because it really is a breakthrough experience. This is the first VR movie. This is the future. This is the way it's going to go. Movies are going to play out. It's going to take place at a location, and it's just going to play out. And you choose where you want to be to see it.
Yeah, I'm excited for that. Anything else anyone wants to add before we end the show?
Nope, I don't have anything.
All right. So that was episode 60 of VR Roundtable. It was a little bit long, but we had a lot to cover, I feel like, and it was a good show for sure. So be sure to leave a like if you're watching this on YouTube, and subscribe with notifications on so you don't miss an episode. If you are on iTunes or any of the other places to listen to podcasts, be sure to subscribe. What do they call it? Follow? Subscribe? Subscribe. Okay, just subscribe everywhere. It's fine. But yeah, no, that was episode 60, and we'll see you all for episode 61 next week.
Adios.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.